All right. Welcome back to another episode of Sky U Pod. Joining us is Eric from the Ohio podcast. Eric, how's it going, man? It's got to feel pretty good to have a team sitting 10-0 at this point in the season.
It's good, but there's a lot of nervous energy in Columbus, Ohio right now. We know what's up ahead, and it's not gone well the last couple years. And with all of the craziness that is Jim Harbaugh and sign stealing and scandals left and right, like the level of just anticipation. I've not felt this since probably 2006 when it was 1 versus 2.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy right here. Like we
Yeah.
started crossing the M's out weeks ago. So
Yeah.
which we usually wait until the Saturday night after the last game, game 11,
Right.
and then we start crossing all the X's out there. Everybody's already started it.
Right. So you guys are potentially looking past the Gophers this week, is what I'm hearing.
There's a I'm sure I know the fan base is, yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm sure inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center there's been very little talk about that game in 2 weeks. It's mostly been about PJ Fleck and what the Gophers are going to be bringing to Columbus. And that's, I think, been a testament to this team in all actuality. We've had one of the more difficult schedules in the Big Ten this year. We went on the road and played Notre Dame in their house when they were ranked fifth, or I think we were fifth, they were eighth, something like that. And we played Penn State. We went to Madison at night, which ended up not being as big of a game when it was, when we got to that point. But looking at the schedule, Luke Fickell, former coach at Ohio State, former player,
Yeah.
that was something that I was nervous about. That game scared me. And then obviously, looking back at it now, I shouldn't have been. But we've played a difficult schedule, and Ryan Day all every week, all season long, has his thing has been about making sure that we have consistent excellence every single week, that we
Yeah.
don't allow ourselves, I'm talking like I'm one of the players here, which I'm obviously not, but talking about making sure that they keep that consistent excellence every single week. And for the most part, they've done that. I think that there's been a steady, consistent growth offensively on this team, which when we did our preview, I was incredibly nervous about the offensive line and quarterback, rightfully so. They weren't great to start the season. But, knock on wood, we've had great health on the offensive line. All five starters have started all season long, and there has been some improvement, especially in the running game the last 3 or 4 weeks from that offensive line. And Kyle McCord is starting to put it all together. He had a tremendous game last week.
Yeah. Let's kind of start there on offense, if you don't mind. The last game I got to sit down and watch fully was that Wisconsin game that you referenced, and I thought, what Kyle McCord had some pretty questionable decision making in that game.
Yeah.
Is it ever a point, do you think, that Ryan Day just needs maybe to lean on the run game just a tiny bit more, or is that not been the issue with this team?
Not with this
Issue
team.
as far as you can get with 10-0,
Yeah.
but
So we have complained on our podcast about the fact that Ryan Day doesn't know how to run the football. He's a former quarterback himself. He's a quarterback coach from the NFL. That he was an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach in college. It's where he cut his teeth. He loves to pass the football. And he's talked for the last 2 years about how this team needs to get better in the trenches and needs to run the football and show toughness, which is what the whole "where you at, Lou Holtz" thing is all about, right? So, which is still hilarious to me. Like, the joke is, does Minnesota have any old people that want to fire Ryan Day up? Because we'll
well,
take
Lou
it.
Holtz used to coach at Minnesota, so
There
maybe
you
he's
go.
using that as the motivation.
There we go. Get old Lou Holtz out there and
We
get
gotta get him
talking
on the
crack.
we gotta get him on the sidelines, yeah.
So Ryan Day, like, if you go back to when we played Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, and they could not stop our run, and everybody's yelling at Ryan Day, run the football. And it's like literally so hard for him to say, you know what, I'm not going to throw. I'll go ahead and run the football. But there has been a more of an effort to do that this year, even when it wasn't going well. Like,
Okay.
we're going to
Yeah.
run this thing even when it's not going well, because he knows there's a chance at the end of the season we're going to get in a bad weather game where I can't throw the football, and we're going to have to win this thing on the ground. And it doesn't hurt that you have one of the fastest running backs in college football in Travion Henderson. If he hits a hole and you don't get a hand
Yeah.
on him, he's gone, brother.
Yeah.
And he's raised his level of game the last three weeks as well with that offensive line. So it's kind of, if you would have asked this question a year ago, I would have said definitely, like, what are we doing? But there's definitely been more of a, hey, we need to run the football and focus on that. He wants to be 50-50, but I understand why it's so hard when you have the wide receiver room we do.
Yeah. Yeah. You already answered my next question. I was going to ask about Henderson. I've always seen him more, I'm not going to say overrated, but I thought like he got a lot of the hype, big time recruit, super fast, like you said. But I've noticed the same thing that you just mentioned. He seems to be putting it all together now, and he doesn't seem to be just like the home run type guy anymore. Is that he's
No.
actually just gashing defenses now?
Yeah, so you'll see him run 3-4 yards in the first half, and then in the second half, those are 6, 7, 8 yard runs now.
Yeah.
And so that's the sign of a running back who has got a lot of tread on his tires.
Yep.
He's, as the game goes on, he gets better. He wears on a defense, and that's also a
Yep.
good sign of an offensive line too,
Mm-hmm.
that they're really wearing out a defensive line, and that's starting to happen. And we haven't seen that. Man, when was the last time we had a running back? Dobbins a little bit, maybe that last
Mm-hmm.
year of J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
He could do that a little bit. But even then, we've almost always had a second back to kind of get the
Right.
tough yards. And then we had more
Yeah.
of the scat back kind of doing most of the dirty work on first and second down. But Henderson's the total package. He's catching the ball in the backfield now. A couple weeks ago, he had 8 receptions in one
Yeah.
game. And it was like, okay, like, there's a whole lot more to this guy's game. And then last year, I think it's really, people should not compare the Henderson today to what played last year. He played most of the year hurt. He couldn't cut at all on that foot. He had
Right.
surgery as soon as the season's over, had surgery, and has come back super healthy, ready to rock and roll, and been much more of what we thought we were going to get that freshman year when he broke Archie Griffin's freshman rushing record.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Entertain this idea for a second. Pretend Marvin Harrison isn't open on some 3rd and longs this coming Saturday. Who should the Gophers be aware of that maybe they're not at this point in the passing game?
Cade Stover, tight end. Dude is I was looking at the numbers today, believe it or not. He's got over 500 yards receiving right now, which for an Ohio State tight end is a career. Okay?
Yeah.
Not a season, a career. In fact, he's only about 200 yards short of breaking the all-time receiving record at Ohio State for a tight end.
Wow.
So it's not a position that is glorified in the passing game at Ohio State.
Right.
The tight end, in fact, at Ohio State, this is they don't hide this from the tight ends when they recruit them. You come here, you have to block first. If you can't block, you can't play.
Yeah.
That's how they look at the tight end position. So there are some super athletic tight ends on this roster who don't sniff the field because they can't block. Stover
Right.
is an absolute animal in the blocking department as well. Just an absolute beast. In fact, his nickname, they call him Farm Gronk because he's a farm boy. And he is second on the team in receiving, believe it or not, even
Yeah.
with Emeka Egbuka on this roster. And we predicted that this might happen because we thought Kyle McCord would look more for a tight end early in the season, and he did.
Sure.
And then he kind of went away from him, and then he remembered, oh yeah, I've got this absolute awesome tight end on my team
Right.
last week, and he's like dishing him the ball, and 7 catches, 79 yards last week. So if you guys make the decision that you're going to try to take Marvin Harrison Jr. out of the game, which if you do, good luck. Uh, no
Yeah.
one's been able to do it. Rutgers did the best out of everybody, and it was literally because Shiano was like, Shiano knows Ryan, and he knows how
Yeah.
to irritate Ryan. Man, he irritates Coach Day. And he was basically just blank. He like had like zone. He played 3-man zone wherever he was. Is what they did. They I think they called it a cloud defense, which I
Yeah.
thought was an interesting terminology. But it was literally the 2 high safeties were wherever he went. That's where the 2 high safeties went, which caused a lot of one-on-ones underneath. And when Dave figured that out, that's when Travion Henderson went to town. He would just send Trey on these little crossing routes, and the linebacker had no chance.
Yeah.
And he just tore him up from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Max,
Yeah, I
that's
guess
all I had on offense.
staying on the topic of Marvin Harrison Jr., he's obviously being talked about for the Heisman. He's obviously been so impressive. How, teams know that when he's coming into their building to play, how does he keep getting open consistently? Is he really they just trust him to do what he does, or do they have to bake in new wrinkles every week or give the defenses new looks?
Yeah, they're giving the defenses new looks with him every week. So they'll move him around. They'll send him in motion. He'll be out on the X. Next thing you know, he's sitting in the Y. Next play he's in the slot. Now we got trips out to the right, and it's like, where's he gonna go? So and then last week, I love this one on that first drive. I think it's been 4 passes, one to Egbuka, two to the tight end, Stover, and then they had one to Travion. And it's like, okay, we got to get him the ball. So he sends him on an end around, hands the ball to him, and he goes in for 19 yards on a run.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, mark it down. They're going to run that play against Michigan. He's going to throw it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be the Heisman moment.
Yeah.
He's going to have he's going to have 20 some touchdown receptions. He's going to have a rushing touchdown. He's going to have a passing touchdown. So that's how they're doing. They're just moving him around
Yeah.
and creating mismatches through formations.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense, and that's so much more terrifying, having to play that and not knowing exactly what he's going to do. It's like you said, if you can know that where he's going to be or try to cloud cover him, it's one thing. But
I know
when
this
you
much.
know where he's going to line up, then
If you make the mistake of playing man and you go one-on-one, it's auto deep ball. Like they know, like, hey, look, one-on-one, safety's over here. I've got this one-on-one, and McCord knows corner end zone, throw it. He'll go get it.
Yeah.
And his footwork is just sick. Like that guy. I mean, I've never seen anybody elevate in the air and contort his body the way he can. He knows how to move his body to shield the defender, and then at the same time positioning his feet so that even though he might be going out of bounds, his feet land in bounds. It's an incredible thing. It's not
the
human.
catch against Wisconsin comes to mind when just referencing that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
The running joke is that Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison, when they were in Indianapolis, decided to make a test tube baby of the perfect receiver.
Yeah.
And it's like Marvin's like, I'll just call him Junior. He's mine because he's not human. He's not a human being.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to really what seems to be the lead of your guys' team this year is Ohio State's defense. Basically top 10 in every major statistic for the most part. Really, I mean, I'm going to butcher his last name. Number 44, the DN, JT.
Tuamuluau.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Who's another player up front that can really get after our QB this Saturday?
Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle right now, I think is having a great year, like an NFL, like I'm going to leave early, go to the NFL type of year. Which wasn't foreseen at the beginning of the season. We all thought Michael Hall Jr. would be that guy, but Tyleik's had a tremendous year at defensive tackle. Jack Sawyer's solid. For a 5-star, we were expecting a lot more than what we've gotten in year number 3 so far. But he is really good at run defense. It's just his rushing the quarterback. It seems like he doesn't have as many moves
Sure.
as what JT is able to bring to the table. JT is incredibly strong, and he knows how to leverage really, really well. So he sets the edge tremendously well. We haven't had a ton of sacks. Like most of our sacks are coming from the safety and linebacker position and defensive tackle instead of the ends, which is not traditionally what a Larry Johnson defense does. But
Right.
that's more, I think, out of design because Jim Knowles loves to play three safeties, the nickel safety. Um, and so there's a lot of moving of that third safety around, and he'll bring him in on a rush when you don't expect it. His name's Sonny Styles, number 6, which incredibly he left high school as a junior. He was one of those who um, left a year early, came to
Yeah.
Ohio State last year, reclassified. That's the word I'm thinking of. He reclassified basically as it was an 18-year-old freshman last year, and he's 19-year-old sophomore this year, and he will be the star of the defense next year. Lorenzo Styles Sr. is his daddy, played in the NFL,
Mm.
former Buckeye. His older brother, Lorenzo Styles Jr., was a wide receiver at Notre Dame, transferred to Ohio State, will be a eventual cornerback for us, but he's being redshirted this year. This kid is scary. If I were to say to you, everybody on our defense is really solid. Like they're going to do their job. They're not going to make mistakes. The one guy you've got to watch is number 6, Sonny Styles. He'll wreck your game. And
Okay.
it's not what you expect because it's not a
No.
traditional, it's not your middle linebacker. It's not your, 5-star defensive end. It's a 19-year-old thin kid running around thinking he's Troy Polamalu. That's what's going
Right.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned Jim Knowles. I was just curious to hear your thoughts on, since he came in and took over this defense after leaving Oklahoma State, where do you see he's made the biggest impact in terms of changing this defense?
Oh yeah, definitely defensive backs. Um, we went on a string of years where we were putting cornerbacks in the NFL every year. Marshawn Lattimore, let's see, Denzel Ward. Gosh, I can keep going. The list went for a lot of them weren't first round, but those are the guys that a lot of people know because they're the NFL All Pros.
Right.
Um, we've returned to that. Our defensive backfield is playing extremely well, and I got to give all the credit in the world to Davis Igbinosun, the transfer from Ole Miss. He's a sophomore, came in, played in the SEC as a true freshman. Someone we recruited and we lost out to Ole Miss. He ended up going to Ole Miss instead of Ohio State. It came down to us and them, and he went Ole Miss and played as a freshman and decided I want to be closer to home. So the New Jersey native decided to come back, play for Ohio State. His older brother actually plays for Rutgers. So that was pretty neat a couple weeks ago watching those two, on the same field. But he brought a physicality to our defensive backfield that we were lacking. He's very, very handsy. He will get called for pass interference. But I'm okay with it because he's uber aggressive, and that aggressiveness will take a wide receiver completely out of his game, out of his element, and that seemed to just raise the whole level of play in our backfield. Denzel Burke is playing all Big Ten, probably second team All American this year, maybe even first team All American. I think he's given up less than 10 passes all
Wow.
year.
Yeah.
He's really, really solid. Um, and then of course the safeties. The safety play has been great. Now we did lose Lathan Ransom, our starting nickel safety. We lost him for the year, so we're having to replace him. And they've been kind of rotating some people in. Jordan Hancock, a freshman, but it's going well. Proctor's played incredibly well. He was a 5-star out of Oklahoma, and just never seemed to click until this year. He got banged up against Rutgers. I don't know if you saw that huge hit where we had the pick 6 where he came in and on that pass and there was a
Oh, that's
collision. The
right.
ball
Yep.
popped up. He
Yep.
hasn't played since then. He was warming up last week, so he could have played, but why? That's like when we talked,
Sure.
we recorded earlier. There's going to be some guys that aren't going to play. Proctor's
Yep.
not going to play. I don't know that our leading tackler, Tommy Eichenberg at linebacker, is going to play. I just don't think they are going to force him. They're going to hold him out for another week. Um, and then of course Lathan Ransom's probably not going to play. So 3 starters on the defensive end, but I'm okay with that because you're getting these other guys a lot of playing time who you're going to need. And Cody Simon, who is a 4th-year junior linebacker, filled in and did great last week for what we saw. We only gave up 3 points, so what can you really complain about?
Yeah. I like to ask this question to a few of the pods, so I'm going to ask it to you. You might have a tougher answer, though, just because I ask, if you were going against Ohio State's defense, and you had to come up with, basically the Gophers' best shot to attack them to win, what would that look like, or what would that be?
First off, you got to stay ahead of schedule. You cannot be unsuccessful on first down against this team. Third down, we are not letting you get first downs on third down. This defense has been phenomenal at shutting the door on third down, even third and shorts. So when you are in third down, you're going to have to get the push up front and run the football. As much as people would think that passing the football is the way to beat Ohio State, it's not. You have to win the line of scrimmage, which is what Michigan has done the last 2 years and how they've beat us. They have owned the line of scrimmage, and we've gotten no push, and that is and then you just hold on to the football, right? Rutgers did it for a half. They had us on the ropes for a half because they possessed the football. They were getting big first downs. They had a little bit of trickery, right? So they were doing some of that. But the formula to beat this Ohio State team, to score on this team, is you can't be afraid to win in a phone booth against us. If you try to say, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to beat you in a shootout, it's not going to happen. Our defensive backfield is way too good for that.
Hey,
so
PJ's gonna love to hear that when he runs the ball 3 straight
I know
times
that's
before punting.
Right, but you got to be successful at it.
No, I know. No, we're gonna be probably down back to just Jordan Newman back there at running back, and he's done well. He's exceeded expectations, but he was a walk-on running back. He's our 5th string running back coming into the year. I don't have a lot of hope for this game, but anyway, Eric, can we get your score prediction for this showdown?
I knew you were going to ask because I asked you guys. So you guys gave me the score 48-42, and I'm telling you that's too high.
Hey, all right.
I will be shocked. We scored 38 against Michigan State, guys.
Purdue ran for 350 yards on us last week.
I understand that. I understand that. You were looking ahead to Ohio State, right?
Yeah, must have been. Must have been.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that. Okay, you twisted my arm. I'll go 42. Seems like a good number. Although, I think we kick a field goal. Because we usually do. We usually try a field goal at least once a game. It's almost like we kind of are like, let's just kind of throw this
have it ready
down
in case you run into Georgia again this year, right?
I'm serious. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to take a shot. I'm just saying.
It's a real thing. There's and if you've noticed, he's only attempted 2 field goals beyond 45 yards. Ryan Day's he's got some PTSD about that. Well, so it's I want to get this thing to 30 35 yards or closer when he kicks a field goal.
You guys can probably win this thing on field goals alone if you really want to. If you want to set that challenge for him.
Let me go 41. I'll say we'll kick 2 field goals. We'll go 41, and I'm only going to give you guys 3. I think the defense right now, our defense right now is just playing out of their minds, man. They go into this game telling the offense, you guys give us 17, we win.
Yeah.
That's their mentality right now. We give up a score. Watching them come off the field is hilarious because they are mad. They're screaming and yelling and and then the rest of the game, nothing. Just Stone cold. And it's
Yeah.
funny because if you look at Jim Knowles during the game, he's up in the booth, he's drinking coffee, he's got his glasses down on his nose, and he like shows no emotion. But during the practice, they say that guy is crazy during practice.
Yeah.
And so they're playing with that mentality. And I love it. This is the Ohio State defense that I grew up on. Man, we called them the Silver Bullets. Every game we knew during the Tressel years, even during the Cooper years in the 90s, like our defense was legitimately awesome every year. And we got
Yeah.
away from that with Urban Meyer. Like Urban was like, "Hey man, defense is second. I want to score points
Yeah.
and score as many and as fast as we can." Well, that's not how you that kills your defense.
Yeah.
And even in 2019, when we had a really good defense, you got Jeff Okuda, Chase Young. I mean, we were loaded at defense that year
Yeah.
too. They were gassed, man. They would be gassed
Yeah.
because we would score in 3 plays. It's like 3 plays, 35 seconds, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, here we go
Yeah.
again." So this has been a different year where Ryan Day has said, "Look, I'm okay only winning by 10, 15, 20 points." And the fan base it's taken some time to adjust because you get on social media and they're like wanting to fire everybody
Yeah.
because we're up by, 12 at halftime. It's like,
Right.
guys, this
Well,
is
that
this
Penn
is how you
State
win.
game, yeah, it was close, but I watched that whole game. Penn State never even seemed really much of a threat. That second half of that game, it was never really in doubt.
Yeah,
It
Drew
just
Aller couldn't do anything.
no.
The Penn, that's a whole nother podcast, man. Penn State. Um,
Yeah.
they're like they're good, but
Yeah.
they choke in the big games, man. I mean, and I like Drew Aller. He's an Ohio kid. He's from
Yeah.
Northeast Ohio, 5-star. We were late on him in recruiting because of the whole, we got off on our recruiting quarterbacks because of what Quinn Ewers from Texas did to
Sure.
us, right?
Yeah.
Reclassifying, coming, getting $1 million and leaving, right? So,
Right.
and it,
Right.
it kind of threw all of our recruiting off a little bit. And so we tried to circle back on Drew Aller, and by then he was like, "I've got a relationship with Penn State, and you guys were
Right.
late on me." So I
Yeah.
like Drew Aller a lot, but I don't know what the problem is with his development there because he looked super good at the opening season against
Yeah.
Western West Virginia. Like I
Yep.
was like, "Uh-oh, Penn
Yeah.
State's got a quarterback." And then it was just like
Yep.
train
Plateaued.
wreck.
Fired their offensive coordinator and moved on. But
Yeah.
Eric, I think they'd be upset if we
Yeah.
didn't get your prediction as well for the next week's game. I know you don't have to go into all the thoughts into it,
Sure.
but maybe just no new injuries pop up for you guys. It's a healthy game. You guys get out there with the dub. What is your gut feeling right now for that showdown at the end of the year with the Buckeyes in Michigan?
Yeah, so if you remove all of the hoopla, all of the court trial that's going to happen
Sure,
here in a few
sure.
days. Jim Harbaugh getting up in his press conference and saying when it comes to viruses, he's at the brick wall or
Yeah.
the dude's so weird. Taking out all of that and you just look at the X's and O's, Michigan has us beat at the line of scrimmage. Their offensive line is super good. It's been a concern all offseason, watching them all year. I think J.J. McCarthy might be the most overrated quarterback in college football, but I also believe that their running game might be the best in college football.
Yeah.
And that's how they've beat us. Now, I believe we have made some adjustments on the defensive side to answer that this year. The question will be when it's all said and done in the fourth quarter, because I think it's going to be a close game. In the fourth quarter, will their offensive line have worn on our defensive line enough that they can control the football in the fourth quarter and just run the clock out? If that's what happens, if that's what they're able to do, we're going to lose that football game. I do not foresee us going in there and throwing the football all over the place. They're very good defensively as well. I think it's going to be a tight football game, and I right now, it's hard for me to predict that we're going to lose that game because I run an Ohio State podcast.
Yeah,
So I'm going to say we win on a last-second field goal.
I
But
like it.
I'm telling you right now, like I've seen this script. I know the play they're running, and on our podcast we've said it like this: Ohio State is built to win national championships. That team is built to beat us.
Yeah, I think
And
that's a
it's
valid
true.
point. Looking at the, I'm not taking a shot at Michigan here, but they haven't won anything after
No.
the last regular season game. So I mean
They
the
can
conference championship, but
when you get to the college football playoff and you're playing an Alabama, you're playing a Georgia, you're playing someone from the Pac-12 or the Big 12 who's got a you know defense is secondary, offense is first, and defensively you've not faced that all year. You've not seen that speed. You've not been spread out like that, and the quarterback is uber athletic. It's a completely different ball game
yeah,
that they're not used to playing and they're not designed to play. That's why TCU was able to run all over them. Not
yeah,
not only did TCU get a heads up about the plays here and
yeah,
change their signals, and that
right,
kind of threw them off, but you know it's a completely different ball game in the CFP than what the Big Ten teams play. Um, Urban knew that. That's why Urban designed Ohio State differently. He got away from the Midwest, three yards in a cloud of dust. He said, if we're going to beat Alabama, if we're going to compete for national championships, we've got to design this team like an SEC team. And it's not that the SEC just spread you out. It's that the SEC, the physicality of the play, but the athletes, the speed they have, um, the play designs that they have, it's just so different than the Big Ten. And
yeah.
Ryan Day adapted that, and now it's gotten to the point where okay, we can play that style against Georgia, but that style doesn't work against Michigan. And I don't know why, for some reason, I haven't been able to figure this out. Why Michigan can do that against us, but then when they go up against Alabama or Georgia or TCU or whoever, they choke.
I think it's a choke job personally, but yeah, but
I just don't know. Some of us, well, not me, but some people around Columbus believe that Jim Harbaugh's in Ryan Day's head, and that
well,
he's got a little bit of the John Cooper. John
sure,
Cooper had amazing teams in the '90s. Like guys, we should have won 2 national championships in the '90s. We had the greatest offensive lineman in the history of football in
yeah,
Orlando Pace, and a Heisman Trophy running back running behind him in Eddie George,
yeah.
right? Like we were unstoppable, and we lose to Michigan State, who was 500 that year. So there's hope for you guys right there.
I was gonna say you're
90s
telling us there's a
football.
chance.
As I said, 90s football for the Gophers. Really, the highlight was we ruined Wisconsin's best chance at a national championship. We
There
were
you
their
go.
lone loss on that year, and yeah, we don't have to go back to those days for us, but for Gopher fans. But
Hey,
Eric, where can we find you if we want to tune into more Ohio State
all
podcasts?
over. We're on YouTube at the Ohio Podcast. Look us up on any place if you want to listen to audio. Download us. Give us a 5-star review. We appreciate that, even if you don't like us. You can find us Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it. We're on the socials at the Ohio Pod on Twitter or the X, at the Ohio Podcast on Facebook, and of course just go to bigbantersports.com. Find us there along with you guys.
Perfect. Appreciate you joining us, Eric.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Eric.